Thank you, everyone. It is amazing to be here, and I'm so inspired. Thank you. My relationship with AI may still evolve. There's room. I just want to thank Jay for getting me here, because we have been on this journey for at least 20 years, and he truly is golden, and I'm more of a doer. I love outcomes, and I don't do a lot of talking about, certainly, my story, so this is kind of new. Hence, I'm behind this podium. So I am the child, thank you. I'm the child of a Sri Lankan revolutionary and a British prima ballerina, both hell-bent on changing the world. And in their minds, that meant, among other things, that all of their 5 children should be unschooled, because, as they would say, how else are you going to learn to think for yourself? Now we have AI, and so I don't need to think at all, and I'm finally off the hook. So I've either lived or worked in the Bay Area since the late 90s, and depending on the plat du jour, I am exposed to so much techno-optimism that it sometimes feels that pigs do, in fact, fly, and it is basically impossible to puncture the positivity until the bubble bursts, whether it is the .com, the clean tech, or soon, presumably, AI. I remember being about 7 years old when I experienced my first bubble bursting. Unschooled, running around my stepdad's office. There were like giant pneumatic tapes the size of my head that would go into giant machines, and editors would make a copy onto a third machine, and honestly, I was not that interested. It was pretty boring. What I loved was a giant Roberts projection map that was on the office wall that showed the US in this tiny, puny actual size. Fascinating. Anyway, one day I would go in from room to room, and every single screen was on fire, and that was the day that I learned that the Amazon was on fire. And if we didn't stop it, the entire world will go up in flames, and climate change became my raison d'etre. Growing up, my uncivilized mind missed a lot of the references that my peers had, like Baywatch. And in my family, eating with a knife and fork was frowned upon, as was competition, sexism, reductionism. I was always seeing how everything was interconnected. And when I came across the work of the systems thinker Donella Meadows, I absolutely loved her assertion that the most powerful leverage point for changing a system is at the level of worldviews. And it seemed to me that the only way to change worldviews is with a story, which is how Jay and I spent so much time together. So my specific focus became deep ecology, which I describe as the study of how our beliefs about who we are and what our purpose is affect our ability to live long-term on this planet. My work spanned 4 continents and about 20 countries, making feature documentaries, TVs and shorts that bridged the worldviews of indigenous people with fancy people like Prince Charles, or now King Charles, and Deepak Chopra, because indigenous worldviews are so fundamentally different from ours. And as an example, many, many years ago, Paul Hawken, the creator of Project Drawdown, told me a story from the Yamana people of Patagonia sometime before they were all killed, some for sport, by machine gun from a helicopter. A priest created a dictionary of their language. Paul has that dictionary and can share many examples from it, but the one that I often find myself coming back to is their word for depression, which is a crab that has lost its shell and not yet grown a new one. So, turning 40 left me without a shell. My dearest friends had whisked me off for a fancy week away. En route, typical climate nerd, I read a book on climate adaptation for LA by the founder of Tree People, Andy Lipkiss, now my collaborator. I was thrilled by what I read, until I turned back to the beginning and realized it had been written 18 years previously, and nothing had changed. Landing in a decidedly un-eco paradise, I find I cannot stop crying. My young children are very confused. I didn't want to attend the delicious dinner that had been cooked to celebrate me, but after much persuasion, I did. The vibe was awkward, to say the least. The first course was over and everyone couldn't get up fast enough to help bring in the next course. The only person remaining was a 23-year-old model, the fiancé of my childhood friend who had arrived recovering from a significant nose job. She reached her hand across the table, looking me in the eye, compassion all over her face, and said, "It must be so hard aging." If someone I know is willing to slice their face for their livelihood, maybe there are other things they'll do for money, things that ensure their survival. I took a hard left turn at that point, deciding that the only way we were going to adapt to our changing climate in time is to pay individuals for climate adaptation. Every day, we incentivize all the activities that drive collapse. What if our systems could see and value climate resilience? What would we all do then? So I went from the exploration of esoteric ideas of belonging and our place in nature to the ultra crass, dare I say American, where is the fucking money? I started a company. It's called Dashboard Earth. We're on a mission to give every human an incentive to adapt to climate change. What we do is deliver hyperlocal actions tied to a region's climate goals via an app that pays you for impact. Our platform turns the aggregated value of an individual's actions into what we call verified climate outcomes. And those are purchased by foundations, corporations, government agencies with environmental objectives. We exist to empower the 67% of Americans experiencing climate anxiety right now. A full 3/4 of Americans want to take climate positive action, but 51% say they don't know what to do. This is a vast and untapped resource. It represents 60 to 80% of global emissions. Individuals' choices, that is. But I digress. Back in the 90s, the cool thing to do was media, and most of my friends ended up in that industry. The ones that were good ended up in LA, not the documentary part like me, boring, the real part, movie magic, directors, producers, costume and set designers. I lived there for 12 years, and while I adore my friends there, my lifetime of climate work rarely ever piqued their interest. They were pursuing Oscars and Emmys and the like. But the last time I was back there, one friend and I did a quick scan. Our community is about 85% under or unemployed, and that is thanks in part to AI. Now for me, dinner table conversation has never been more interesting. People who have been largely focused on their careers are suddenly railing against a system that they can't see ever working for them again. And they're experiencing climate anxiety. This isn't limited to the movie industry. At the meta level, we're looking at the rapid disenfranchisement of people of middle-class privilege, which will quickly make the US a very difficult country to govern. But it also provides an opportunity. The crab has lost its shell. The new one is emerging, soft and parchment-like, vulnerable. This is a risky moment, and it can go one of two ways. In direction one, the fundamental story we're told is that we're effectively locusts living on a random rock floating in space. We are responsible for death and destruction wherever we go. In direction two, there is overwhelming evidence of a very different story. We humans are in fact responsible for much of the massive diversity on this planet. If you go to the Amazon, one of the most diverse places on the planet, and take a 360-degree turn with an ethnobotanist, they will tell you at every degree the things that humans did to create that biodiversity. We are a keystone species along with starfish, otters, elephants and fungi. Keystone species are the glue that hold a habitat together. The oak savannas of California, the prairies of the Midwest, you name the bioregion, humans created it and maintained it. They just happened to be humans that didn't believe in privatizing the commons. Anyhow, in this story, we belong here. We are needed. We all know what needs to be done because we feel it. We live our lives connected to something larger than ourselves. And I hope that I and Dashboard Earth are part of that story. I know I took a pot shot at optimism earlier, but the truth is that my system loves to feel joy, loves to feel like anything is possible. And I think that's true for every human, even if it's just a tiny part of them. Without a shell shaped by a story in which I belong, I matter, I have value, things can look very bleak indeed. If you're looking at climate stats, we're 100% fucked at this point. If you look at mainstream climate renewables at all costs, narrative, fucked, none of that adds up. Because climate chaos isn't about icebergs on the pole and sea level rise or even CO2 alone. It is everyone's climate everywhere. It means hotter hots, drier dries, colder colds and wetter wets. It is hyperlocal. It's why your power goes out, why food prices are up 30%, why there will be 1.2 billion climate refugees a couple of decades from now. This is already felt by the majority of Americans. Climate disasters displaced more than 3 million people in 2022. Climate change is the #1 reason people in America give for wanting to move house. I'm going to say something that might be considered heretical, but with my direction to shell firmly in place, I'm aware that if you look at water and the water cycle, instead of just CO2, there is absolutely a path to survival with the time and resources we have left. If we restore ecosystems at scale, we will physically cool the planet, giving ourselves enough time for the CO2 to rebalance. But let me explain. Please, if you would, close your eyes. Imagine you are standing on hard, bare ground, surrounded by concrete. The sun is beating down on you. The solar panel next to you is so hot that you could fry an egg on it. You are hot, the earth is hot, and all of that heat is all getting trapped in the atmosphere, making us even hotter. Now, instead, imagine beneath your feet is a healthy, spongy grass. The tree above your head is providing shade. The plants to your left and right are evapotranspiring. You'd be much, much cooler. That is because vegetation is a massive air conditioner, absorbing the sun's rays, turning them from heat into life. It's a miracle. Vegetation, trees, healthy soils, and the consumption choices and adaptation actions that support them will all cool the Earth's fever, whether you are urban or rural. This type of adaptation gets short shrift because it requires people en masse. I consulted with NASA for a long time, and they refer to people as wetware, which basically translates as pain in the ass. And believe me, there are a lot of days doing what I do when I feel that. But thanks to the work of thousands of people over many decades and the Biden administration, 96% of Americans now live in a location that has a comprehensive climate plan. The solutions are there. There are billions of dollars trying to move the climate needle, and people finally care. A paper-thin shell exists. To grow that, people need a vision of what has to happen, a set of actions to achieve it, and it has to be rewarding, financially, emotionally, viscerally. There is perhaps a hint of irony in me being a CEO, but it turns out that I built an amazing team, and now thousands of people take thousands of actions on Dashboard Earth every month in our first city, Los Angeles. Those numbers grow every month, and next month is our soft opening in San Diego. We believe we can no longer afford to ignore the fact that there is real value in every climate positive choice. More importantly, there is plenty of work to do in the world. No one should be unemployed unless they want to be. To do that, we have to start valuing the things that actually matter. At Dashboard Earth, we're psyched to be building that possibility together with more than a little help from AI. Fun fact, my brother and co-founder is severely dyslexic, and this year he was able to take over product leadership, a feat that would be impossible without AI. We would not benefit from his genius, although I'm pretty sure he wishes he could go back to being an urban farmer some days. AI is the latest tech bubble, and it could be the last ever. It is accelerating our resource extraction and contributing to increased energy needs, far outstripping what we can produce renewably, pushing us back into fossil fuels and natural gas, which is 28 times worse than carbon dioxide. AI is also pretty much the only major economic growth area, honestly, and I admit, I think I'm the only person in my company that doesn't directly use it. We've gone tenfold the number of people we serve, and we have not had to add any more staff. AI is basically like taking steroids. Whatever you apply it to gets bigger, faster, metastasizes. That is a lot of new shells. At Dashboard Earth, our mission is to incentivize every human to do climate adaptation. As we scale across the US, AI will massively expand our capabilities. For example, assigning real value, dollar value, to the time, effort, and actions people take to adapt their region for climate change will require significant computational resources. A marketplace where the real outcomes of these actions will be bought and sold, where corporations, NGOs, foundations, government agencies can put their money where their climate promises are, requires a level of complexity and precision that no human could possibly calculate alone. But technology, of course, is neutral. It is human stories that teach our technology about ecology and how not to lose sight of our intrinsic value and the value of nature, our life support system. The story about who we are, what our purpose is here, what is possible, what feels aligned, this is what will determine the future of life on Earth. I cannot wait to hear your story.